Hello, lovely people. First time having everything set up again. I got it. I logged in a little bit early. Microphone's on, everything's cooking. I logged in a little bit early just to make sure things hadn't changed in the last couple of weeks, and they had. Hopefully we're live. Hopefully we're going out to YouTube and the Twitches. Restream was not playing nicely. But so far everything seems to be cooking. Hello, my name is Steve Conley. I am the writer and artist of the webcomic The Middle Age. A new episode was just posted today. If you check out middleagecomic.com, or if you go over to Webtoons, well, no, it won't be, it's not on Webtoons yet, it's a new episode, but you can read the comic there. You can read Webtoons and Tapas, but it's on Go Comics, on Middle Age Comic, and if you go to patreon.com/Steve Conley, the new episode at a jumbo size is free to read. But I make comics. I also make role-playing games. Not game systems, but supplements for role-playing games, including the new, let me see, I'm pointing in the right direction. Wait, which way is it? That way. That is the Prayer's Handbook, which is currently kickstarting right now and doing really well. I had a hope that it would exceed 450 backers, because the very first one I had done, which was part of Zine Quest in 2022, was called Intoximancy, and it had 450 backers, and I really hoped that we'd exceed that, like the project would grow, that this would grow, that the audience would grow. And I wasn't sure how people would react to something that's weird, like meta-domain clerics. I think clerics are a less popular class than wizards, and Intoximancy was all about drunken wizards. And then the next one I did was called Death-Dealing Rogues. Again, rogues might be the most popular class in D&D. That one was that didn't have as many backers, but the game was kind of going through some fits and starts, because this time last year we had the OGL debacle. Anyone deep in the world of Dungeons and Dragons and role-playing games, not even all that deep, if you're halfway into it, you probably were aware of like all the drama. It's usually drama is meant as like a disparaging term, like a dismissive term. It's not in this case. It was literally very dramatic and very nail-biting. The people who own the Dungeons and Dragons brand at this point, Hasbro, and their subsidiary Wizards of the Coast, were going to be taking away the rights of us indie creators to make material that's compatible with their operating system, essentially. They wanted more money, and they were creating all these weird systems to kind of make it easier for them to roll out their own VTT, their own virtual tabletops, and their own app-based games. And it'd be great for D&D to be an app. It'd be great for people to be able to play on their iPads versus one another and not have to sit around the same table. We're all using Zoom. It'd be great if you had your iPad, someone else had their iPad, you could play D&D together that way. That seems like a great idea. Someone should do that. Some people have with virtual tabletops. But they're all clunky. They don't have all the rights to all the official D&D stuff, because that stuff's all gate kept, because that's their intellectual property. Anywho, they were going to introduce this draconian system, and on the heels of that, release the next version of Dungeons and Dragons. In the intervening year, well, first of all, there was such a huge blowback from the community, like massive unified blowback, not like most other things in America right now, which no matter what it is seems to break 50-50. If it's going to be like, should we breathe oxygen, you're going to have half the people going, no, I don't think so. I don't want the government telling me what I should breathe. Eric, how are you? And so there was a huge blowback against Hasbro, and they backpedaled, and basically the fans won. The people who wanted this open gaming license, which they had for 10 years, coming on 20 years, certainly 10 years for the 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons, Hasbro relented and put it into the Creative Commons, which is an external contract system that they can't even pretend to have any authority over. The people who authored the original OGL said it was irrevocable. But because it didn't say explicitly irrevocable in it, that it wasn't or may not be or whatever, there's room for lawyers to be lawyers, and a lot of people with a lot of money, like Hasbro, to be able to push people around. Anywho, It entered the Creative Commons, and that kind of gave us a lease, because this project, my initial project, Intoximancy, came out right before, like came out in December, and then this OGL thing happened in January, a year ago yesterday, I think. A year ago today, I think Linda Cadega's article came out. So when I was producing Death Dealing, that was part of the Zine Quest in February, when there was all this animosity towards Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. Not only were people saying, all the people who didn't like 5th edition basically had it like were loving it because finally everyone's agreeing with them. 5th edition is no good, and the people who own it are no good. So they finally had people on the same side as them. As far as I was concerned, once we got it into the Creative Commons, we had won. That's what we wanted. We wanted 5e to continue to be something that we can all, to be software, be an operating system with which we could write things for. Now, they made a promises that the new version of... It's really weird. They say that in the next edition, next version, they're really backpedaling heavily, that the next iteration of Dungeons and Dragons isn't a version, it isn't an edition. It's still, now they're actually calling it 5th edition, a phrase they never used for 10 years. They never called it 5th edition, they called it Dungeons and Dragons. The new iteration is coming out with new books. So it has to be different enough for them to have new books, but not different enough to alienate all their existing customers, or to keep them from selling supplements along the way. So here we are with my third book, Prayer's Handbook, and thank you to Baker and Caitlin, the last two folks who backed it. I really appreciate it. We've exceeded 450 backers, and we have about 6 hours to go. It will end tonight, just under 6 hours. It will end tonight at 10:15 p.m. East Coast time, and so far so good. Eric, he says, what have we come to? Love for the dingy basement and the folding table with Cheetos. Yeah, there's something lovely about that image of D&D, that kind of classic idea that, I don't know, when I first played Dungeons and Dragons, it was never my copy of the game. It was always my friend's, James. He had everything. He had all the books. He had White Wolf magazine, he had Dragon magazine, he had all the TSR games. Marvel Superheroes was a big game for us to play for the longest time. And then, like most people, certainly most people my age, I fell out of it. Like I got work. I had jobs to do. And it was like 25 years of not playing. I barely played 2nd edition. I never played 3rd. I created some artwork for a game company for 3rd edition, variations of D20 stuff. But I went and got in the newspaper work and illustration work and drawing comics. And it wasn't until the pandemic that I found myself playing D&D again and getting super into it, like I do about most of the little hobby passions, and starting to make my own content. It's probably a weakness to try to figure out to you start playing a hobby and immediately start thinking about how do I turn this into my full-time job. I wish that wasn't an impulse. I wish that was can I just enjoy things? But the response has been great. The Intoximancy got an Emmy nomination last year, talking about a 2023 recap. I submitted it to the Emmys mostly because I thought whoever the Emmy judges would be, because when I was nominating them, when I was submitting my work for consideration, I didn't know who the judges would be. I mean, when you submit, you actually mail a physical copy to each one of the judges, so I knew their names as of that point. When you fill out the form, at the end of it, it says, okay, here are the mailing labels to mail your books. So the Emmys kind of get a bad rap outside the U.S. because you have to mail internationally into the United States, which increases the cost of submission, right? So it's more expensive to submit if you're outside the United States. And if we have judges, the thing is, if we have judges who are outside the United States, then that penalty will affect the folks inside the United States. But I submitted my copies and got nominated, and was really surprised to be nominated. So very exciting. So today we have a few things. We've got the countdown over there in the corner. for the metadomain cleric, and you can find out more at prayershandbook.com. For folks who don't know what the Prayers metadomain cleric is, it's a cleric who thinks this all might be a game, and it's very much Neo from the Matrix. It's Deadpool. It's Abed from Community. The intensity of how meta the character is really up to the player and the dungeon master. It can be subtle. It could be something that the character keeps to themselves and they don't want to share with anybody else because for fear of being thought of as crazy. It could be something where they're proselytizing and they're saying that their player Dave is the greatest, is better than all the other gods out there. But also I wanted to put forward, I did this over in Discord, was talking about the idea of DMs, dungeon masters who want to use this character class as a villain. And to me, the best example of that would be Moriarty from Star Trek The Next Generation, a fictional character who is brought to life in a game setting, in a role-playing game setting, and who finds themselves sentient. And, I think from a player's point of, from a character's point of view, it'd be really easy to view the dungeon master and the players as sadists. The kind of trials and tribulations, the things you put your characters through. Your characters could resent that, and a villain could resent that, and want to burn the world for it, and want to, destroy it. So I want to work on an illustration for that for the book today. That will be a character. I think it's going to be what looks like a metadomain cleric. I think it's going to be a very malevolent-looking figure tearing a book in half, and so that will be the sketch. And then I want to make that into a mini, and we'll see if I can swing that. The plan is to release this book in PDF form this month. So a lot of the art is done. A lot more art is yet to do. I was thinking about weaning myself from my streaming schedule a little bit, but I think given how much stuff I have to do, I'm going to be on just as much as I was, if not more. But the plan is to get this book out and be ready for Zine Quest next month and start another campaign then. So we got some stuff to do. So let's get into it. I hinted with the title of this, and on Discord, there's a Twitter post which which talks about this is the end of the golden age of TTRPGs, and it's a interesting read. There's always a market for something that is doomsaying, because you can always be pleasantly surprised the world didn't implode. But it's always it riles people up. Part of it could be very self-fulfilling as a prophecy. If you're going to say that, things are... Oh, Aiden, thank you so much for backing Metadomain. It's very easy to declare doom, and because if you're right, you're a prophet, and if you're wrong, you can be pleasantly surprised that the world is more resilient than you and your wisdom thought it was. That's often so anyway, so the person is the argument. I want to be as fair to that person's argument as possible. The idea is that back when there was 5th edition, and almost exclusively 5th edition, that this was this behemoth, this titan, and we're all playing 5th edition, or so many of us are. That created a common language that we all spoke, and there's a benefit to that. I think that there's a lot of truth to that. The argument reminds me very much of the arguments about message boards, pre-social media, pre-Twitter, pre-Facebook, pre-blog, where when there was only a handful of communities and a handful of places where people could congregate, the conversation was also that there was value to it. I don't want to paint too broad a brush. Part of it is absolutely, rose-colored glasses and being wistful for the past. Oh yeah, message boards were great. But as someone who managed some message boards back in the day, it was not always that great. And that's where terms like flame wars, were coined because of all the online battles inside message boards. But then when people had blogs, instead of everybody congregating, having a conversation in this communal area, suddenly it was just the blog of that particular artist, that particular creator, that particular author. And so that author was able to curate the conversation and kind of police things, and and the system would get, or the community would get fractured. And so the argument that the community will get fractured when if fewer people are playing 5e and more people are playing disparate systems, yeah, I mean, Matt Colville's out. He's going to be playing MCDM, the RPG for them. Critical Role may be out. And the millions of people who follow Critical Role may be out. Now, I still think people are going to watch the old Critical Role stuff, and I think that's a really fascinating thing. The idea that Critical Role might be playing their game Daggerheart in let's say season 4 of, or whatever you'd call it, whatever year, iteration 4, the 4th generation of Critical Role. Let's say they're playing Daggerheart. You can say that the 4th one is happening right now with Candela Obscura. But let's say their next fantasy campaign is playing Daggerheart. How compatible is that with, how easy is it for Keyleth and other characters from season 1, 2, and 3 to show up inside the Daggerheart world? Or does the world have to end? How compatible are those systems? How compatible are those mythologies? In season 1 of Critical Role, they were fighting things like Vecna, and they were dealing with things like the aspects of the very much deep lore, not lore, but at least some of the icons of the Dungeons & Dragons franchise. Those have been stripped from the animated series naturally because they don't own those IPs. So how much of that happens as we move along? And will people who watch them play Daggerheart even understand what's happening in seasons 1, 2, and 3 of Critical Role? I found that when I went and watched Acquisitions Incorporated, they were playing 4th edition. I didn't understand what I was watching. There's a bunch of really talented, funny people sitting around a table cracking wise, but I didn't know what any of those things, whose turn is it? What was happening? Why would they have? Got very confusing very quickly. So if the argument is that as the community fractures, segments, that is the end of the golden age, I do think there's an argument that maybe was not overtly made, maybe hinted at or alluded to, was that it was easier if everyone's playing 5th edition to sell 5th edition stuff. Like for me, I'm benefiting when I sell a 5th edition supplement. The more people who play 5th edition, the more likely I am to sell something. If everyone's playing Daggerheart and MCDM and Tales of the Valiant, do you have to create versions for each one of those properties? Or do you now have to maintain inventory of books for each of those properties? People who like books might be in trouble. People like PDFs, But I found that when I was set up at my first gaming convention last year, the GameHoleCon, where people came up and I said, here's this thing, it's what I do, and they, it looks really cool. I don't play 5th edition. Do you have something for Pathfinder? Or do you have something for Morkborg? Alright, so this will be it's got to be an aggressive monster, so we're going to make him tall, so that means an easy way to make a character look tall. DEG! Why did you not get a shout out? I had just confirmed Streamlabs to do everything it was supposed to do. Refresh Streamlabs. Streamlabs has failed me for the last time. That's not true. They'll fail me again and again and again. Streamlabs. How the heck are you, DEG? Recent events. Come on. There we go. Streamlabs and I have a hate-hate relationship with each other. Yeah, I think they have the worst interface. They're aggressively awful. I hope you had a wonderful holiday and end of year. Hopefully 2020 will be a great year. I am as well. All the holiday plans here got smushed, crushed. 2 days before heading out for the Christmas to New Year's week, the host was confirmed COVID. They got a positive COVID test, and so not going anywhere. I thought we still might try to go toward the end of towards New Year's, so I immediately rushed out and got my 6th booster. Not popular here in Florida. Not a long line. So I got my 6th booster, and I was like, I'm ready. The idea is this character's going to be pulling a book apart. So we want to have the broad chest leaning back. As I've mentioned here on the stream, and I have to do the 2023 recap, but honest to goodness, 2023 recap. All the stuff with role-playing games, all the stuff with the middle age, 3D sculpting, 3D printing. I got a 3D printer right after Black Friday, and I've been printing some stuff. That's a good one. I've shared some of these on the stream before. This is 3 times size. So I like the idea of sculptures. I try to print Sir Quimp. I don't know how I think I have to slice and dice this character a bit more. What I've absolutely learned, thanks to 3D printing, is I think it's going to make me a much better sculptor, because there's a lot of decisions I made with this character which make no sense whatsoever, or just actually mean to 3D printers. And I knew I mentioned during some of the streams, like, this is going to be mean, but I really like the effect. But like trying to print those wispy little arrows sticking out of the Sir Quimp's back. So I have to create divots, holes where the arrows can be inserted. But by and large, I really like the idea of having these large prints available at conventions. I can print things that are actual. I've tried a few things, like the Grognard, which can print fine from time to time by itself, but in this case, you can see that the hand is a different material. In this case, I printed the top book that's floating there, and the book that's supporting it as a separate piece. So the platform is printed separate from the figure, who's printed separate from the little books, and is printed separate from the axe itself. And so these pieces, I'm creating all these different notches and elements so that they can be glued together and print in a more reliable way if you have an FDM printer. Now, if you have a resin printer, it'll print much better, much more quickly, and with probably easier supports. But here is an oversized view of the kind of supports that are coming out of the printer. This is an oversized version of the Metadomain Cleric. And so far, I find that these prints are quite excellent, except, again, there's like a medallion hanging from the cleric's neck. And the back foot of the miniature, if you've seen the sculpt, is very much, the toe is just kind of touching the ground a little bit. It's a very delicate gesture as he's moving forward and raising his hand up. But the idea was that back leg wasn't supported, and so the print failed in that regard. Same with... So I remodeled it and planted that foot firmly on the platform. So now when it prints, the leg will print fine. But in this case now, it is the medallion on the neck, which was wispier, which had less strength than the supports. So when you pull the supports off, it can either give it the support or give it the miniature, and you want to kind of minimize that. But in every other way, the mace around the belt... Stop focusing on me. Focus on the figure, you silly computer. Let me do this manually. Advanced. Autofocus off. Zoom in and see what we get. Maybe turn that down a little bit. So you can see the supports at the bottom, little wobbliness. I have to clean this up with like a file. And some stringing there. Like the filament gets so wispy. Anywho, I'm learning a lot, which is great. That's probably my favorite part. Oh, and then I'm going to share this. I share this on my mailing list. I haven't put this over on Discord yet or Patreon, but this will be something that's going to be available to Patreon supporters as a STL file, maybe through my website if people dig it. But it's a book. It is a miniature 3D printable box, and it was originally meant to be a large size box that would fit the zines, but the problem was that it really requires a huge print bed. Like I can print it, but it's got to be like, you need to have a printer that can print like 10 inches across, the 10 inches tall for the height of the zines that would go inside the book. Okay, so what can I do? Well, how can I use this in a way? So I printed it at 1/4 size. I was like, oh wow, this is almost perfect for like a dice box. But now I'd have to make the sizes that would hold the magnets a little bit larger. But thankfully I've made the whole thing so it's print in place. Each one of the pieces, the door, the chamber, the back piece, and the individual, I just pinched my finger, and the individual hinge bolts are all printed separately, and they're all printed without supports, so you don't have to worry about anything like those weird tree shapes and things like that. And there's a little cavity underneath it so that you can place felt, adhesive felt, and so your dice don't have to roll around inside plastic. So, but yeah, DG, you said you were playing D&D. Have you played a game? Have you just made up characters? But those books, the STL files will be available to all my Patreon supporters this month. And if there's interest in it, I'll make them actual printed copies, printed and assembled copies available on my web shop. I think if they're pulling the book apart, it would be like, maybe more like, and normally I like to make this a German. We're trying to figure out the times. Gotcha. That's part of D&D, is trying to figure out when you get your friends together. I think I heard that about the D&D movie, was that if they wanted it to end in a realistic way, the final scene would have been all the characters trying to figure out when they could get together again. Think about the villainous characters, or all the characters in D&D, is you can't just quite show like a close-up of them. I guess you could, but you want to show their full figure so that people have a sense of what you're dealing with. I don't know, maybe it needs to be more aggressive than that. And he's this very static figure. Move up here a little bit darker. I'm going to lighten that up some more. But I haven't printed the house yet. The monster creature from Death Dealing. That was absolutely a goal. Oh my goodness. Kyle, thank you so much for pledging. That's awesome. I really appreciate it. No idea where he's going with that. I got distracted by Kyle's generosity. Thank you, Kyle. It's got to be more aggressive. The hands have to be angrier. No, I don't think this pose works. Scooch it, move it out of the way. Try something else. I think a character stepping forward is always more interesting, so let's start with that. I already have the Grognard carrying a bunch of books, so I think if this character has just like shreds of a book, maybe that's the solution. That's the difference. But that essay that someone posted about this is the end of the golden age of role-playing games, I feel is they're getting mocked. I saw one of the comicbook.com wrote about it, or had a short YouTube video about it where they're just saying, "Oh, that's dumb." I don't know. There's nothing. Some people are making the case, well, this isn't the golden age, or they're making all sorts of other arguments, or it seems really pedantic, but it's all very silly. It's if anything, it's just brought people together, saying that it's not the end. To me, it looks like there's always been an increase in the number of games, and the number of players keeps increasing. So the notion that there are more games will somehow mean fewer players, no. But I do see how we could lose people who were key figures in that world. Like if Matt Colville goes over to do that thing, MCDM game, if Critical Role does Daggerheart, if they move out of D&D and they're not talking about it, then the thing that this person is writing, whoever the author of this piece was, the thing that they like to talk about, the thing that they want to do is not going to be the hot topic anymore. To which to him means the end of the golden age of whatever. I think had they not called it the golden age of TTRPGs, people wouldn't have cared. Like if it said the golden age of 5th edition or golden age of, this era, basically saying this era was over. That would be hard to argue against. Between the OGL debacle and everybody and their brother coming up with their own role-playing game system. It might be the end of free money on Kickstarter for some folks who are just they could slap a 5e logo on anything. I got approached by so many people, so many campaigns about swapping. You promote my book, I promote yours, and so many of them used their Kickstarters. So many of them used AI work, AI imagery. Like, no way. I can't believe Kickstarter allows that. DG, if this is the golden age, then there will be a huge renaissance. There's a fatigue in the younger generations that comes with doing everything online. And there's something magical about getting groups to play tabletop games together. Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the biggest change could happen is if something happens to Kickstarter, right? I mean, that's the most likely thing. If they get, you could say that there was a golden age of Kickstarter when Kickstarter was the only game in town, and now you have Indiegogo and you've got BackerKit and you've got Zoop and Crowdfunder and a million others. Those are splintering audiences, which you could say is very smart. Oh, what's this? Robert, thank you so much for pledging. That's awesome. You have all these other audiences, and I don't see the. I mean, I see I get the idea that some of your favorite people who are at this party are going to leave this party to go to another party. That makes sense. That's sad. But the idea that the golden age is over. I talked about this with the Matt Colville game, which launched the same day as mine, is doing slightly better than me, than my campaign. I think he's raised $4 million with 25,000 backers. You know what? I'm going to concede. You win, Matt. But again, I don't know where I was going with that. I apologize, everybody. I goofed myself into a corner. So I tend to make anything that's... I've been making a lot of the evil creatures, like undead skulls. They're kind of easy to make those the bad guy. But even if the community gets split up, I don't think that's that big a deal. If D&D is any... Oh, that's where I was going with this. Matt Kilville's game launched at the same time as mine. And people are like, well, why would you launch anything in December? No one's got money left. Everyone spent all their money on Black Friday deals and things like that. I did it then because it was as soon as I could. There were delays in shipping out the death dealing stuff, and so I thought I didn't want to start another campaign until the previous one had been delivered and was done. And so it was done. Well, let's launch. And now it's like, also I want to launch it soon so I can be ready for... And I didn't want to wait till Zine Quest in February, because I have another plan for Zine Quest. But I feel like Colville's doing it now makes a lot of sense, because there are all these question marks hanging over Dungeons and Dragons. What will this new edition be like? They talk about it being a refresh or a... like they call it an edition the way when a book releases a new edition and there's a few type corrections, there's maybe a new foreword, new preface of some kind, minor corrections, an update to the previous edition, but not a whole new rule set the way third edition was distinctly different from second, and fourth from third, and fifth from fourth. Not those kind of rewrite from the ground up rules. That this is really just iterative, and that the idea is that it is kind of stuck. They want to have a new version. They want to have something that's compatible with the online system, so they want to streamline some rules so that the online, they haven't said this outright, but it's got to be the main reasoning, is that they want to standardize stuff so it's easier to port over. There are some things in D&D which would just not play well. I mean, there are rules in D&D which have never been explained. You know, you get this sage advice from Chris Perkins or somebody on Jeremy Crawford over on Twitter in Sage Advice or something like that, and their answer is kind of vague. It's like, well, what does it mean to you? How do you feel about that? And here there are programmers asking, hey, no, we have to program this. It can't be a fuzzy thing. So they're trying to make this fuzzy game into something that you can program. And so I understand that reasoning. But so there's all these question marks hanging over what the next version of Dungeons & Dragons is, whatever the next iteration of it is. And here's Matt Colville going to come up with his own game. And here's Critical Role coming up with their own game. And also at the same time, they were told, these bigger companies, these bigger franchises, Critical Role, MCDM, Pathfinder, Cobalt Press, these companies which relied on 5th edition. Pathfinder didn't at that point, but they relied on the open gaming license, at the very least. We're being told that Hasbro's lawyers were going to try to stop them. So even if they had no legal leg to stand on, it was going to be very expensive to fight. And why would you want that? So, and they took a hard look at what they did and went, okay, well, why don't we just make our own? And as soon as D&D was released, at least 5th edition was released in the Creative Commons, Cobalt Press seized on that and said, okay, let's do our version. We'll do our version of 5th edition and clean up a lot of TSR's baggage. And Colville and Critical Role decided to go in their own, their absolute own directions. Tim, thank you so much for backing. You're awesome. So there's probably a golden age of crowdfunding that's probably more likely to be affected by a split audience. But Colville's talked about his books being allowing for third-party creation of material. Cave, I've been streaming since 4 and I've missed you the whole time. What do you need from the grocery store? You don't eat. I've seen you, you're rail thin. But we'll all wait for Cave to get back. Everyone just sit back. We'll just wait. So I like the idea of the character tearing a book apart, but I don't know if that's a good model. That doesn't really say like aggressive. It's like mean to a book, but it's not really. I feel like it's like the Grognard. I have to throw stuff up. Holy crap! 465 dumbasses gave you their money. No, they've only pledged to give me their money. Dumbasses! How dare you? How dare you? On behalf of 464 of those people. I can say 464 of them are not dumbasses. Oh, but I was showing some... So, print in place. These are not print in place hinges, but these are not print in place. I shouldn't say that. Print in place, when you do 3D modeling, tends to... David! Print in place in 3D modeling tends to mean that that there's no assembly required, and there are print in place hinges in 3D printing where you can print a hinged object, and basically it comes out of the printer assembled. This is not that. This takes 5 parts. The hinges are 2 pieces, but it's got room for magnets. It's got a well that is deep enough to hold D20s. Yeah, Gabe. This is a character who's, at least initially, I thought the character might be ripping a book in half. The idea is, that this is sort of a villainous metadomain cleric, and I'm going to set this up as a creature in the book, as a character sort of like, if you in Star Trek: The Next Generation, Moriarty. Someone who believes this is all a game, and I was thinking about it more like just this kind of violent tearing, magically enhanced in some fashion, like throw the book out kind of energy. But I think it's going to be more. I think that's just, it's a little too static a thing, and part of me, now that I have a 3D printer, is thinking this is impossible to print. If it's a game, shouldn't he be reading ahead to learn it? I think the idea, reading ahead, very Pierce Hawthorne. I think the idea is that this character is powerful and is absolutely nihilistic. That the villains, this character believes that lives don't matter. It's all a fiction. You're not. None of you are real. I guess Mr. Smith might be another analog, but I think the Moriarty characters, I tend to like that intellect behind the character. If I can hint at that, where the real villains are the dungeon master and the players, specifically the dungeon master, who's an absolute sadist. And you know, if you could blame the person who made the unfair world that you're in, and even burn this whole world down, that's this kind of character. Oh, but did you both find the same? I do like old time strongman. That's amazing. That's more like old time bad printing, really. Old time bad bindery. You get much better bookbinding when you support my projects. I don't know, not really. I'd be terrified if anyone tore apart one of my books. How dare you? How dare you? Oh, listen. So 5 hours to go. Actually, it will end at 10:15 p.m. tonight. Thank you again, Kyle, Robert, and Tim, the last 3 backers. But I feel like a lot of the if it's going to be a character, oh no, that's a better. The tearing the book is a better image for an illustration. It's not a good mini. But if I'm going to sculpt it, I want to make a mini out of it, or at least make the file available. So I do have photos of the Prayers Handbook books. You'll be able to see that on Discord by tomorrow, and the STL files will be available to my Patreon supporters. So if you're a Patreon supporter and you want to download this, again, these don't require supports. You just have to print the pages upside down. Because there's pages that kind of fold down, and if they fold down, you need a support. So you turn it upside down, you print another blooming, and you don't need the supports. David, that's exactly right. That's exactly what it is. That's what the character's going to be tearing apart in Prager's Handbook. So the idea is the Grognard and this one, currently called Metagamer. That'll change. I hope it'll change. I can't tell you how many times a placeholder thing has found its way into the final product. The idea is that this character is the antithesis, the same way Buzzkill was for Intoximancer and the House was for Death Dealers. The kind of antithesis of the subclass. Have the book already in 2 parts and jagged edges. That way it can print. That's smart, yeah. Did I get a pedicure? I did not get a pedicure. I got a manicure. I'm in my 50s, as most folks know. I'm horribly, horribly old, and I have like been a nail biter most of my life. I fidget. I can't help myself. No, these aren't my feet this time around. My feet have, that's my OnlyFans, David. Twitch and YouTube get the waist up. And so yeah, just always if I'm stuck in traffic, if I don't have something to do with my hands, I'm like always like. So I went and got my nails did. I mentioned before my my holiday plans were all thrown off because my lady's mom tested positive for COVID the Tuesday before we were heading up there. So the Tuesday before Christmas, she tests positive for COVID. All the plans get canceled. Every day it's checking in to see if the test comes back negative so we can give it time. And the next day I went and got my 6th booster shot. Just so that if we're going to go up there toward the end, toward New Year's, I wanted to be as bulletproof as I could be. But it meant staying home, it meant not going anywhere. And so she wanted to get a manicure, and I'm like, I'm sorry, a pedicure, excuse me. And I'm like, oh God, she says, I want to go get a manicure. I'm like, all right. My hands are on the camera all the time, so I hate when I see, torn up hand. The Moose makes a grand entrance. All right, so let's try we'll put the strongman pose in there for a second. It's kind of the pulling back, tearing the book apart. No, I don't want that. I don't want to hint at strength. I don't want this to be. I want this to be an intellectual character, not a strong man. And maybe they're just throwing pages. Maybe the book's just there and it's just tearing pages out, and the pages are coming. They're impossible to print too, but I did print a small version, actual size of the shuffling mound from Death Dealing. It is. You can't tell those are cards. You don't know what's happening. It needs to be a large character just so you can see the details. What am I doing? Clear. Let's just do a stick figure to start. So the character is carrying a book. Oh my goodness. Shane! Thank you so much. Shane. That's a suspicious name. Pages not impossible to print if you put them in the floor base of the mini. Oh yeah. I've done that with feathers from Waddle Bottom. I just placed them on the floor. And by the way, Cave, all your notes about welding things together and mushing stuff, it's like now it all... now that I'm the one suffering, I'm absolutely taking those lessons to heart. There's a medallion on the cleric's neck here, which prints half the time because it's support. It just should be welded to the figure, but it's loose. It comes off the figure a little bit, and because of that, when it has a support, you tear the support off. Sometimes it tears the medallion in half, which it did in this case. This figure printed perfectly everywhere except where it tore the medallion. Fortunately, it tore the medallion in a very interesting, possibly sacrilegious way. So I printed it, and also the foot is missing. So I might make another prosthetic. Take the one that I sculpted for the Death Dealing Rogue and see if I can weld that to the figure, because the back foot wasn't properly, because the back foot was just the toes were just touching the ground where they needed to be locked in place. They really need to be fused. And so this one is fused. It's like really integrates into the floor quite a bit better. And so when it printed, the whole thing was sturdier and was great, except for that one medallion, which So if I find myself going back and resculpting stuff. So anyone who downloaded the Grognard, I now have a 4-part version of that. So the figure will print separately from the floor, which will print separately from the axe, and which will print separately from the loose book. The player from the sheet. That's excellent. Ludius Ex Machina. That's awesome. I hope everyone had a lovely holiday and a lovely New Year. What was everyone doing? Everyone get nice gifts? I hope you did. I got more Dungeons and Dragons dice. The theme of which is that they have ducks in them. I got from my birthday duck dice. Translucent resin with little rubber duckies in them. So they are they're my go-to dice, and so now for Christmas I got a bunch more, not of the exact same design but similar. They're very silly, and I'm very happy to have them, and I will get a lot of use out of them for sure. But for folks who read my webcomic The Middle Age, a new episode number 298 was posted earlier today. It's on Go Comics. It's on my own website. I want the character to be aggressive. I'm not. This is why I don't draw my webcomic live on the stream, because it's just me fumbling around, doodling. I don't know how Allie does it. I normally would come into this with like a much bigger plan. I managed to do that with the Grognard. I had like a really loose plan, but then I was like, okay, let's make him the Hulk. Make it a really beefy character. I liked what let's make this the big bad. Let's make this, get rid of this other figure. But a really funny thing was that I was looking to see if the meta domain was gaining any traction. Did anyone write about it? A quote that I can use for the book jacket or anything like that? And I've got a bunch of them from readers and from some very kind reviewers. N-World, the big gaming website, was kind enough to promote a bunch of, or not promote, but say, here's Kickstarter's worth taking a look at, and included MCDM's and mine, and like 2 or 3 others. So that was super nice. This campaign, I didn't do a lot of like promotional swaps with other campaigns. The main problem I found was, as I mentioned before, was I would go check out their campaign page, and it would say in the section about AI, we use AI, in which case, no, I'm not going to promote them. But you could say why you use AI. It's always laziness or money. It's one of those two. Anything else is like, well, we use it to supplement, blah, blah. Hire somebody. We use it because it's a time saver. Lazy. Or hire someone. You want money. This whole idea of Kickstarter is you want to raise money. Why not? But you don't want to pay people? You want money, but you don't want to let money go. To make the thing people are buying better. To hell with them. What am I doing? I want this to be in a... Okay. Thicker brush. I'm going into the details without getting the gesture right. That was real amateur hour stuff there. One of the biggest mistakes with drawing is to get caught up in the details before figuring out the gesture or the balance of the thing. So a nice fat pencil will solve that problem. Like you just can't do the details if you're drawing with a bar of soap. Like a big piece of chalk or something like that. So when I was creating the middle-age webcomic, one of the thoughts was, this is never going to be a movie. This is never going to be a property. Never going to be a live-action version or anything like that. And so I want this to... That was maybe one consideration, but the thought was that let's make this as comic booky as possible. Let's make this as cartoony as possible. And so one of the things was 4 fingers, thumb and 3 fingers. You know, like Mickey Mouse, something like that. Like it's a really cartoony. So from the very beginning, that's what the character has. It wasn't like for animation purposes to make my life easier. It's kind of actually more challenging to remember to remove that. And it makes some hand gestures really difficult to do. I find. But it had been a while since I'd drawn an episode of The Middle Age, and so as I'm drawing them, I realized, oh no, I'm drawing the right number. I'm drawing the correct number of fingers on these people. So I shared the inks on Patreon, and then realized, oh no, I got to go back and start taking fingers off. Can't draw details with thick soap. Challenging. Well, someone said drawing with a mouse was like drawing with a bar of soap, and so I think about that often. Almost all my original comics that are now 30, 25 years old were all drawn with a mouse. And I don't know how I lived like that. Also, my webcomic at the time, Astounding Space Thrills, would take me 2 hours, beginning to end. I had a independent little design shop where I would do graphic design all day and web design all day. And I spent 2 hours doing each installment 5 days a week of my webcomic. And it was all vector-based. It was all essentially Illustrator. It was called a program called Freehand. But it was a vector program. It was Aldus, then Macromedia, bought by Adobe. And Adobe already had Illustrator, so they got rid of Freehand. All drawn in freehand. I remember I had a document that was just hands that I had drawn, and so I would use them and grab them, and it was clip arty in a way after a while because I'd drawn it so many times. Usually I would bring the hand in and then tweak it, but because everything was vector, it had a very clean look, which lent itself to sci-fi. But I was able to do an episode in 2 hours, beginning to end. Now it takes me 2 days to do a episode of my webcomic. It's gotten so complicated, and the coloring is just... I've been a bunch of cartoonists and a bunch of published artists, for, I don't know, much bigger projects than mine, have asked me to color their projects, and I'm like, I can't do it. There's just no way. It takes me too long. It's just impossible. Have you drawn any bare feet in the middle? I have. Yeah, I think on the holiday image. They're not bare feet, but they're in, the Sir Quimp is wearing. It's Sir Quimp and the two baby dragons, and they're sitting by a fire, reading a book, and Sir Quimp's wearing socks, and you can tell that there's a. I think I have the image here. I think you can tell that there's a toe, a toe, a toe, and a toe. That was the little holiday image I sent out this year to folks. It's very funny. These hands are very wispy, and so are the wrists. They kind of remind me, when I was a kid, there was a toy called Micronauts, and there were these characters like, oh boy, I'll never remember the name of them. One was like Time Traveler or something like that, and they had articulated wrists that would were designed to snap. Because they were so thin, and I feel like I have drawn something very similar here. So what I do is I flip the thing over, create a new layer, and tighten it up till I get to where I like. Like right now, that arm is all messed up, but that's all right. We'll fix it. I prefer to maintain the illusion that I know what I'm doing. So the idea of drawing on these streams is always kind of like, well, there goes that illusion. Smarter artists would call up illustrations, reference images of a person in this pose, and learn from it. David, if you're still there, are you doing oh, soon you'll be gone chewing off Millie. Did you have a stream tomorrow? Are you gonna do a Friday stream for Discovering Dragons, or perhaps the next big thing? Discovering Dragon, fantastic. Have you enjoyed the time off? It sounded like you were relishing the idea of a break. David, I also have to check. I I think, yeah, I think I've drawn Melvin. Melvin has these kind of small, kind of booties for his wizard slippers, and I think you can see that I think they've got a big toe and three smaller toes. Moose says, I've been waiting for David to start streaming again to tell them I got my parents all for Xmas, and they love it. Oh wow, wow. Yeah, don't tell him now, Moose. No, I wouldn't. I would not leave him hanging. That's good. Leave him guessing too. All right, so the campaign ends in 5 hours. My money stream is going to start late, perhaps only as a Discovering Dragons review. I have a doctor's appointment. Okay. Hopefully it's all good. I'm not a fan of symmetry, so let's try flip it again. I don't want it to mimic the shape, the pose of the metadomain cleric, which is kind of lovely. Although maybe that's what I do. Maybe maybe I'm actually. It's not that I'm uncreative. It's a callback. It's not that I'm out of ideas. It's that I'm it's a nod. It's an homage. Part of it is I want the hand to be just the knuckles to be everything to be pulled back like in anger. haven't had a checkup in 25 years? The hell, David? The hell? I understand the, it ain't broke, don't fix it, but, well. Yeah. I think you'll be fit as a fiddle. I think your doctor's going to be like, keep on doing what you're doing. I'll see you in another 25 years. Very positive. I just really like the idea of someone who just like is so angry at the idea that a character could be so angry at the players and the dungeon master for the hell that they put players through, specifically the dungeon master, how could they be so unfair? How can life be so unfair? Now I want to make this a necromantic character who brings back all the characters who have died. They just summoned the longer it went, the more scared that I get that. That's a very honest answer. Yeah. I think I did that with cavities. I think I grow back if I ignore it. Maybe that's it. Maybe this is undead. Maybe they are an undead character. Maybe they are they're a character who has been killed off in the past. And Kickstarter, Laura. Thank you, Laura. You're awesome. Are we going to hit 500 backers? 33 backers away? Is that possible? I wouldn't have thought it. But we've exceeded the number of backers of Intoximancy, and certainly the most popular reward this time around has been the PDF, which I think is great. I mean, people who make RPG stuff love PDFs that sell because there's no fulfillment. I mean, there's some fulfillment. Reading the book is fulfilling, but in terms of delivering on your goods, there's no postage, and you send people a link. I'm excited for that. And I think it's people testing the waters. So part of it to me is like the book has to be great. Someone took a chance, they get this PDF, and they have to, if they don't laugh on page 1, I feel like I don't stand a chance. It has to be funny and rewarding and a pleasure to read right out of the gate. And if I can get that reaction, and if they can feel it's balanced. We haven't even talked about it today. I wanted to talk about it, the balance of the subclass, the abilities of it, because it's been in flux this whole time, and I think I kicked around what the various abilities might be. Usually there's like 10 or 12 different abilities I say that the cleric might have, and then we boil it down. And sometimes those abilities become spells. Sometimes those abilities get thrown out altogether because they're too complicated. The main principles when I'm making this thing, I stumbled onto this with Intoximancy, and it's been my mantra since, has been like fun, powerful, and playable. Fun is kind of easy. Just it's got to be silly. It's got to be hopefully my sense of humor, have some sort of internal logic. Fun can be powerful. And these things overlap because some players just want to have a powerful character. To them, that's fun. They want to cast a big heal. They want to do a lot of damage. They want to be mobile on the battlefield. They want something that's particular to their character that sets them apart from the other characters they've played. My stuff is almost nobody's first character. There is an exception to that. I've been contacted by a reader who specifically is his girlfriend didn't want to play until she found out about the Intoximancer, and that's why she wants to play. Metadomain is nobody's first character. But fun and powerful. Powerful is kind of easy. This power creep happens in role-playing games. Characters get more powerful over time. More abilities come up, and it's an easy metric when you're looking at it. Like D&D Beyond and World of Warcraft used to do this. They'd release a new spell or a new magic item, and they're like, "Well, everyone's using this. It must be a good magic item." And it's like, good or just powerful. To me, increasing the amount of damage a character does isn't fun. It can be fun, but there's nothing to it. There's nothing flavorful to that. Giving characters advantages. Like, there was a level 17 ability for the Metadomain Cleric, and it was just, it gives you advantage on certain rolls. And I'm like, yeah, it's a really awesome ability. Everybody would love to have it. But what does that say about the character? You could say Metadomain, having more dice is very meta. Everything that involved the table and the mechanics of it can be meta. But it wasn't fun. It didn't have any taste to it. It was just bland power. And then playable is also tamping down on that power, and making it fast when you play. Like the idea, you can make something really cool, but if it's going to involve a slide rule or breaking out a calculator, or a chart, those things take up time and slow the game down, and that's not fun, and that's not playable. So all that stuff boils the character down in a lot of ways, and so. How can I do this in a way that doesn't give away the game quite literally? Let me put the spinning minis up for a moment. I think it's going to switch things around. It's already live. We can ignore all that for a moment. But here are the abilities. Well, at level 2, you get your book. No, level 1, you get your book. It doesn't really give you anything. I didn't want somebody just taking a 1-level dip into Metadomain, and it... you can't be a level 6 rogue. You spend 1 level into Metadomain, and suddenly you have this book, and it messes everything up. Okay, at level 2, you get what's called meta knowledge, which is almost like a telltale, almost like a classic idea of metagaming as a pejorative. The idea that you know something that your character knows something they shouldn't. In this case, they get to, they can use their channel divinity, which is a cleric thing, and they get to roll a die, and maybe they learn all the weaknesses and strengths and name of a target. So you're fighting a bad guy, you hit him with this thing, you can learn their vulnerabilities, their invulnerabilities, their resistances, and the name of the character, if they have a name. If you fail the roll, it sends you to a random chart, which the dungeon master can refer to, in which case they determine, or the player can roll something weird like the character. You learn the character's weight, the name of the mother of the character. It's probably with a very strong chance that it's Martha. So meta knowledge. That's one thing. It's really simple, low level, not too powerful, very handy no matter what level you are. If you're fighting a big bad. And if the big bad you're fighting has legendary resistances, they can get a saving throw. Almost normally, it's just your die roll, super simple, super fast. You find out that the skeleton is immune to necrotic damage. The other one, level 6, is what is penciled in as bullet time, which is as a reaction for 10 minutes, you use your wisdom score as your armor class. Clerics tend to not have high armor. For 10 minutes, your armor class is your wisdom score, which is probably going to be an 18 or a 20 by the time you get to level 6. So suddenly you have a 20 armor class. To me, that's very Neo from the Matrix. That's not your physical dexterity that's helping you avoid damage. That's your understanding of the world and the way your place in it. You also have advantage on dexterity saving throws. Pretty neat. Limited to the number of bonuses you have for your wisdom score. 8 is when you learn your player's name, and you can invoke it to upcast a spell equal to the number of your bonuses or your wisdom modifier. Marcos! Nice to see you. So the idea is you learn your player's name, and you can use it, invoke that player's name by the daunting doublet of David Peterson, and you suddenly have that Cure Wounds is now treated as if it was one level higher than you cast it. Again, very meta and also very powerful, potent in a way that is you might only be able to cast level 3 spells, but here you are casting it at the power of level 4. So it kind of lets you exceed your grasp a bit. You can use it for damage if you want to upcast that that spiritual weapon, or increase the power of your heal. And technically, you could upcast something as a level 10 spell once you get to level 17. And then 17, there's a huge gap there for clerics, but the Prayer's Handbook is a magic item that levels up, and that'll fill in those gaps, which I find that's between level 8 and 17, that's a massive gulf of boring leveling up. Sure, you get more spells and stuff, but for clerics, it's kind of like doldrums. It's just you get more hit points, you get a few more spell slots, things kind of drag. But level 17, you get the ability called Rules as Rewritten, where at level 17, when someone casts a spell, you can, other than yourself, you can have its damage, range, duration. Basically, you rewrite the spell by halving it, by cutting a number in half. Again, I didn't want to be too mathy. But suddenly, if you're rolling less, if the fireball does less damage, if the meteor storm does half as much damage, or affects a smaller radius, you get to choose what that is. At level 19, you could double it if you wanted to. So if an ally casts something, you can double the damage, you can double the range, or double the duration. And then at level 20, you can do all those things for yourself. You can double your own duration, double your own damage. No, most campaigns never get to level 17. Most of this is almost entirely moot. But it's important to have it there. It's important to be an incentive for people to reach for. And at level 20, that's where you... at Rules as Rewritten is you invoke the name of the GM. Or the Grand Metatron. Okay, where are we? Restream chat. So, those are the leveling up... Oh, there we are. That was a peek at some of the spells and such. But there's a lot to tear up and a lot to do. But thank you all so much. Again, Laura, I really appreciate it. Marcos, very good to see you. I hope all's well. I also shared the buffs of the or the stats of the Grognard. You can see those over on the Discord. I'm really happy with those abilities. They have an ability called, they're carrying a stack of books, and they get to throw those books, and they have a random effect when they hit, kind of an explosion, kind of a fireball kind of effect. But the idea being that depending on the book that they throw, and the ability is called Splat Book. And it's called that because in role-playing games, there was a game company that was producing all sorts of, I think it was White Wolf, that was producing all sorts of extra books for various subclasses. So like you'd have I think it was like the Grand Book of Archers, or the Holy Book of Clerics, or something like that. So basically it was this book, that book, the whatever book. And so it became the shortened to Asterix book when it was written out in like forums and things like that. The blank book of this, the blank book of that. But in the UK, that's called a splat, the Asterix. So it's a splat book, and that term took off. So any book that was basically what I've been creating are splat books, the Metadomain Cleric, things like that. So the idea that the Grognard would have this ability, and they throw a book, and it's called splat book, just makes sense. So that's the origin of that term. M, thank you so much, M, for your support. That's one ability they have. Easy, you see the mini, it's running around with a big stack of books to throw. It has the axe, which you can attack with, and then it has a defensive ability, a quick study. And the idea is every time it sees an enemy attack, itself or somebody else, it's not specific about but if an enemy attacks, it can use a reaction to learn from that and increase their armor class by 1 for 1 minute. So they basically they're learning the combat tactics of their opponents. And so every round, whenever they have a reaction available, they can use it to increase their armor class, and it lasts for a minute, up to +5. So their armor class starts at 14, but as the fight goes on, they get more defensive. They get more defensively capable the longer the fight goes. So after 5 rounds, if they keep using their reaction, if they haven't used it for, I don't know, an opportunity attack, then they can, they'll have a 19 armor class after 5 rounds. So it's interesting that the longer the fight goes, the smarter the Grognard gets. And I like that a lot. I think that's a fun ability. It's one I'd want to actually give players. If I create a fighter class or a barbarian class, I can imagine giving them that ability. That feels very, very Captain America, very or Batman. It feels like that's how they would fight. The more they fight, the more they learn what their opponent's doing, and they become harder to hit the further along the fight goes. But it wasn't a perpetual or a permanent one. It's not like I fought this character before, I know all their tricks. That's too much bookkeeping. If this were a video game, absolutely. That would be the thing. The longer they fought that one particular person, if they ever fought that person again. But it's D&D, and in D&D, when you fight somebody, odds are at the end of the fight they're dead. That's just how the fights go. It's very rarely do player characters pull their punches to let someone live, to fight another day. And I didn't give this character some sort of get-out-of-jail-free card. Like, if this was an ability you'd give a big bad who has teleport or Misty Step or Dimension Door, something that would give them the ability to get out of there and then live to fight another day. Then next time you fight them, they have the higher armor class in perpetuity. But that's a bookkeeping nightmare, and nobody wants that. So I'm liking how this character's going. I'm liking the torn fabric, the rotted vestments. A sash of some kind, maybe the symbol. was an early thought when I was doing the meta domain book, where I thought about making a tier where backers could be illustrated in the book. Like I would have the idea was the scene was going to be sort of a Clash of the Titans, bunch of gods standing around a table, and there's figurines of characters on the table, and they're standing above, reaching down, about to move one of the figures or something like that. Again, it's the idea is that we're all pawns to the gods. And in the meta domain conceit, that the characters are all pawns of the players, and that the meta domain character is aware of that. And so the thought would be to offer to backers at a very high level, just because it would require so much work, to have their faces illustrated as one of the 3 gods or 4 gods or whatever like that. So you're part of that pantheon and that one pantheon image. It ended up, a lot of the more grand promotional plans and unlocking plans and things like that for this kind of fell by the wayside just because of when the campaign happened. Like, I just didn't want to send an announcement or make a change around the holidays. It's like people with their families, I just felt weird interrupting stuff. So basically, if it wasn't available on day one, I didn't really want to add it. The only thing I knew that I wanted to add was the grognard, but that was baked in. I thought if we were going to get to 20,000, which could have happened with just a few different promotional swaps, things like that. Stuff I didn't do, again, because of the holiday. These kind of books, the STL file for the books could have been available. But I feel like making those available anyway is the right thing to do. So my Patreon supporters will get those. We'll get those STL files, and if people are interested, I can run off some. They take about, I don't know, maybe a day to print all the pieces. Probably 30 minutes to assemble, to let glue dry. Because the idea is that the books are, I'm going to take the pin out. But the idea is that there's the back of the book, this, which has got the spine built into it that says Prayer's Handbook. It has some sort of metaphysical imagery on it. You've got the 2 pins for the hinges, and then you've got the cover, and the cover can be a variety of styles and designs. These are 2 color because my 3D printer can do 2 colors. But they don't have to be 2 colors. They can be a single color, and then you can paint them. Or add a wash or something like that to them. But because I had the option for 2 colors, but these, they just take longer because the filament changes and the filament swaps and all that. And then there is the cavity, which is meant to look like paper, and in this case I've stained it. So, and then underneath the whole thing, there's a bit of a cavity here where you can put a little bit of felt. So the felt goes in, that piece goes on top. So the back felt gets self-adhesive. Felt is the easiest thing to use. The pages get glued in. The magnets get glued in. There's 4 rare earth magnets that just kind of lock the whole thing in place. My microphone did not like that sound. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to show on that. I actually have one that's assembled. So this one shows the felt inside there. Pretty nice. So I think this was the first one I assembled. So originally these were meant to be books that were going to be larger and would hold the zines I've made. It's fine, and they can do that. So I printed 1.5 size just to test the pins and the hinges and all that stuff. And there was quite a bit of work I had to do. I had to discard a handful of essentially misprints where the hinge door just wouldn't quite close all the way, or the magnets were fighting it. So my worry was that it would just pop open and you'd lose your dice or you lose whatever you're carrying in here. And I probably could have gotten away with just 1 magnet, but I'm like, I really want this thing to stay closed. And so once I finally got the size right, then I'm like, this would work great as a dice box. and I put dice in there, and it was just too tall with the felt to close, and so I had to extend the height of the whole thing. So that was another hassle. So I've got a couple of them on the shelf here, which were some of the early prototypes, where the door, the lid just doesn't quite close. Printed on this nice green. I have to stain these to make them look a little bit nicer, but these will sit on the shelf. These are my little keepsakes. I think this one too. Huh, I think this is a legit one too. I think I can actually assemble this one, unless the dice don't fit. I'll have to double check. I don't know why I set this one aside from all the others. Anywho. And they also nicely fit the death dealing card decks, if you want to put those in there too. That's also an option. I'm now running low on the card decks. That's why they're not available as an add-on through the metadomain campaign. I had to... they're only available at the top. There's a super tier which says get everything I've ever made. And so I've got enough copies for that. I don't know. They're expensive to print. That's the problem. So it'll be a while before I run off another batch of those cards. It might be something I have to do with another Kickstarter, like, a special edition of these things or something like that. Oh my goodness, Russell. Thank you so much, Russell, for pledging. That's awesome. So because there weren't a lot of campaigns running at this time, and because so many campaigns are like on other platforms, like Matt Colville's thing is over on BackerKit. There weren't a lot of campaigns for me to cross-promote with. I don't cross-promote with other things like if they're doing a Dungeon Crawl Classics or a, I don't know, Morkborg. My stuff's for a different operating system. There's no point in doing a cross-promotion there. But I got approached by so many people. Hey, would you promote mine if I promote yours? And I'm like, you're using AI. I can't. They were very sweet in their replies back. I felt like I didn't want to start a fight with anybody. If they're using AI, I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. I just don't think they know better. I just don't think they know any better. I think you look at AI and I use the Adobe suite of products, right? I do commercial work, and I've always wanted to be up and up with the software I use. And I don't just use Photoshop. I use After Effects. I use InDesign. So I do get a lot out of all those suites of products. And back in the day, when they would roll out a new version of the software every year, it would cost me approximately what it cost me now. So, but now it's going up. It was $50 for the longest time, $49.99. Then it was $54.99, and now it's going up to $59.99. And one of the things they touted as a reason why it's all these new features they're adding. One of them is an AI generating bit of software. They're going to incorporate AI generation into Photoshop. That's like a promise that they've made. I don't think you can do it yet. Certainly can't do it in the version I have. But they want to be able to do that. They want to. I understand it feels like magic. But it's just the opposite of creativity. so these creators who have got these, and what's really interesting is, Cave, how are you? Yes, I can. What's really interesting is that one of the projects that approached me and said, hey, do you want to swap promotion? They use AI. But they also say that they're going to do their fulfillment through BackerKit. I think Twitch chat is broken. Messages aren't going through. Son of a gun. So are you able to see them in Twitch chat, or am I just not able to see them on the feed here? All right. I'm going to see if I can fix that. Oh, poop. Alright, we'll see if we can fix that. I might just have to open up the Twitch chat as a pop-up chat. I think you can do that in the browser. It's a shame I'm missing out on all those wonderful compliments that you're no doubt giving me. Well, I apologize. Cave, thank you for popping into YouTube and letting me know. While that loads, let me fix that eye a bit. I have to use the Chrome browser to get Twitch to load, and I hate it. It is a resource hog. It is no doubt downloading all my personal information. It's got to do that first before it actually loads a web page. I've turned off every feature in the damn thing. I swear web browsers worked better in 1997. I take Flash and Macromedia Director over whatever the hell Chrome has working in the background. Still loading. Yeah, all that stuff happening in chat reminds me of a story. Let me pontificate for a bit. I'm surprised you're back, Cave. I thought you went out for a pack of smokes. I was never going to see you again. Like, is Cave coming back? I don't know. It's taking its sweet time. Classic. Look, all these people are online. Alan's online. A Blue Skittle is online. Loading Artist is online. All these people are online. Lovely people. For the love of Pete. This thing will not load. Anywho, meanwhile, back at drawing. Very much getting a 1970s Marvel Werewolf by Night vibe. If all the comments in Twitch are just about Werewolf by Night, I will really appreciate it. Oh my goodness. Marco says a test message. Okay, I'm missing stuff. And for some reason, my message did not go through to your thing in the screen. I'm back, and judging by the lack of progress, I am happy to see you. This was not worth it. That was not worth it. With all the trouble of loading that. All right, pop out chat. All right, I think that'll work. I don't smoke, unlike Gandalf. Well, Werewolf by Night. Is this Werewolf by Night? It is! It is, actually. How dare you? Who was that? Frank Brunner? I think Frank Brunner is still with us. I don't think he's passed. I think he's one of the few Bronze Age guys who are still really kicking. I got a commission from him a number of years back for my science fiction comic. Well, Finance is so awesome, and so is... Why is it not loading on the other... Let's try this. If I can... That is the chat, and there's a chat box. Yeah, I just see... I'm refreshing that. Because I can type Werewolf by Night all night long. Huh. Okay, sure. Why is my chat not working? Well, this is actually is a fine thing. Let me see. That's a chat right there. Refresh that. Serves you right for multi-stream. In my defense, I don't know what I'm doing. In my defense, it's indefensible. Well, fine. Well, I was thinking about pausing this here, and coming back in a little while. Sans YouTube. I apologize. One viewer on YouTube is probably just Cave. Just Cave. I don't mean to say it like that. But multi-streaming over to the Facebook. So we might do Twitch and the Facebook. So I might be back here in a little bit. I don't know where to send all you lovely people while I am taking a quick break. But let's do that. I'll come back in half an hour. You all, gosh dang it! I got to open up Chrome again. This will be the better part of 1 week. And we will let's go check out Alan. Alan raids us all the time. He's a lovely person, and does all fantasy work in ballpoint. Can I do that from the chat box? Probably, maybe. Raid Alan Barbeau, B-E-A-U. Let's go. We'll check out Alan, and I'll be back here in half an hour, and I'll stream again, and we'll stream to the Twitch and the Facebook. So I never streamed to Facebook during this Kickstarter. It'd be nice to see the folks there. Raid Alan Barbeau, B-A-R-B-E-A-U, E-A-U. I got it right. 2 L's in Alan. That threw me. All right, folks. I'll see you back here in half an hour, or if you all just want to stay with Alan, he's a lovely person. I wouldn't blame you.